Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samuel64, and welcome to the RoboCast. And I'm all by myself. Well, from the main three anyway. I have to say, first of all, a very big thank you to my first guest, who is from the Monsoon team.
Oh dear. Oh yeah, hi. So my name's Tom. I'm from Team Monsoon.
Yeah, he literally joined me. I messaged him as we're recording this literally 5 minutes ago, and he very gallantly jumped in and came to give me a hand. That's very kind of you.
No worries, no worries at all.
And then guest number two.
Hi, I'm Ned. You'll probably know me best as Shuntposting Moderator, which is pretty depressing. I feel so like underqualified here. We've got two Roboteers, and then three Roboteers, two who have been on the show, and then just me who just does stuff sometimes.
You do lots of important stuff, though. You do good stuff.
Absolutely. Ned, you're perfectly qualified to be here. We can't be. We have to balance it out a little bit. Anyway, guest number three, introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Orion Beach. I'm from Skorpios, team OffBeat Robotics.
Welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and it's great to hear from a new team as well. Skorpios is a machine that I've certainly admired for the last couple of seasons. The giant leap forward in season 3 was amazing, and maybe one step further this year. Like, why the vast amount of changes? What was the main cause behind that?
There's a couple things. So one, when I originally designed Skorpios for season 2, the enforcement of how long you could hold an opponent and attack them was a bit different. And in season 3, actually made some inquiries because it didn't seem like they were enforcing it how the rules were written. So if I was pushing someone around and attacking them, and they started a count at that point of me grappling, and I pushed them into the wall, that count would just continue to 10 and stop, and it's supposed to go in 20 seconds or 30 seconds, depending on how you interpret how the rules are written. And, you need that time with a saw robot to be able to cut. And so, for this last season, they actually changed the rules for that section on grappling and grappling time, and they basically just gave the ref carte blanche to stop you whenever they felt like. So.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you hold on for too long, as we saw kind of in episode 1 with Quantum and Blacksmith, really. And obviously, season 4, the big change was a kinetic energy weapon rather than just the saw. I can see why. It's a point scoring weapon rather than the saw. Like, which do you think's more effective? Would you say?
They do different things. So both of them can deliver damage. The idea with the saw was I was running that seasons 2 and 3. The same weapon a lot of people like Death Roll and Bloodsport at the time were running for their big vertical spinner.
Yeah.
And so if you can take that energy and pour it into a very small spot for 20, 30 seconds, you can do a lot of damage. That's like 5, 6 big hits all in a row, but concentrated down to a very thin blade. I mean, part of that is just the application process getting in, is kind of how we ended up in that configuration. And it was partially, I had a smaller bot, an ant weight, that was a lot of fun, so I thought it would be cool to make a big version of it. And then the Switch is absolutely just like wanting to win, like doing well and just want to get in wins. And we're still trying to do, top attack, just like the previous seasons, and we're still trying to potentially slice into our opponent. So one thing you'll notice, that blade is relatively narrow. It's about half inch, 13 millimeters wide, and so we're still hoping for a shot to slice into some better parts.
Okay, good to know. And obviously Tom as well with Monsoon. Very, as much as it looks very similar to last season, there's a lot of different under the hood. What's the big changes for Monsoon?
So yeah, I mean, visually, it's kind of designed to be similar to the first one because that one's, that's the one that people recognize more than say Tauron. So it's very, very different under the hood. So the big problems from the last season were that our weapon mechanism just wasn't strong enough. In two of the fights, we bent 2 weapon shafts. We also bent our single tooth bar, of course, in that Waiachi fight.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, the robot was right on the weight limit, as is tradition with my robots. So one thing
they're big boys.
They are pretty big boys. They're massive boys, way bigger than you think. Like Monsoon is 1 meter wide. Like that's mental. So yeah, the way that we saved the weight is we swapped out our brushed drive system to a new brushless system.
Yep.
And a lot of robots nowadays are using brushless motors in their drive and in weapon. And it's proving to be more and more reliable. So we kind of jumped in with brushless this season round, and that gave us the weight to bulk up the whole weapon. So the shaft is now a lot thicker, the bulkheads are thicker, and the whole chassis as a whole is much, much stronger. It's just a much sturdier robot than the first one.
Nice. As we'll discuss a bit more later, your fight with Ragnarok.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, was the first fight of the night between Skorpios and Copperhead.
Oh yes.
Now I'm sure, Ryan, I'm sure you can talk us through this one. What was the strategy going into this one? Obviously, Copperhead's a very tiny little thing with a big nasty drum. Was like, how concerned were you going into that fight?
Oh, I mean, we try and take every fight pretty seriously, but our specific concerns for Copperhead were it's a brick of a bot. I mean, you can kind of see how thick the side rails are on it. It's got thick top armor. There are some exposed, bits on it that we were going to aim for, but we were mostly just trying to slide our forks in at just the right angle to get them up onto the wedge so that we could hit them. I mean, you're always trying to, with a vertical spinner like that, make them do a big turn and make a mistake so that you can just take advantage. But, I mean, we're a pretty tough bot, mostly just, worried about losing a wheel, like you always do.
Sure, absolutely.
Running those wheels. Keep your front pointed towards them.
Yeah, I mean, it was a brilliant back and forth. Watching it back, the amount of energy that Copperhead was putting into like flipping you over. I think he bent the front as well a little bit for it's quite a serious bit of kit.
386 AR 400.
Yeah, that's very substantial machine all over. Ned, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, what do you reckon? This between these two, the two solid machines. We've kind of seen good things from both of them in the past. Good way to start the season for both of them. Would you say, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say. Obviously, Poison Arrow beat Son of Waiachi, which was a massive shock in season 2.
Yep.
Skorpios almost made top 16 if I'm right last series.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you pulled out or something because of parts or whatever. But so yeah, both of these machines are brilliant bots. I think it's quite a shame. I don't think Copperhead was working 100% correctly. The drum didn't seem to spin up quite as fast as it possibly should have, in my eyes.
Yeah,
no.
So, Orion, would you probably know anything more about the problems with Copperhead at all, or?
Oh yeah, they were having brushless weapon issues kind of going into that fight. I mean, it was the first fight for that bot, so they're having a bit of new robot-itis.
Yeah.
And we were definitely checking them out in the test box. And one of the things that they had going on their weapon, and you can kind of see this at the beginning of the fight, or right before the fight when they're loaded in, is they've got a big chunk of weld on the bottom of their drum.
I did see it, yeah. We kind of thought, maybe it had a off-aired fight or something, like cut already, but that's not the case.
No. So what it was they actually had it machined out of house. And they paid a bunch of money, from where it stands, to have this thing machined, and the two bores on the end were quite off-center. So when you put a bearing in each side, the drum is diagonal.
Oh.
No way, that's crazy.
Yeah, and not just a little bit. I want to say they're over an 1/8 inch, like 3 or 4 millimeter, off center. So the welding was to try and get it back into balance, because it was just way out of balance. And they actually had the weld start to crack the drum because it's hardened S7. You're pouring heat into it, and it starts to crack. And so they had to grind the crack out, re-weld it, and then they hit that whole welded area with a hammer to help relieve the stress so it wouldn't crack.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows how much you prepared. Like the smallest thing like that can happen as well. It's kind of, I suppose, disheartening for the guys. They put on a good show. I think they were. Would it be fair to say they were on top of the fight until they started to just generally slow down and stop eventually? I think they were certainly giving out a good hit or two.
Yeah. One of the things you can see in the replays is we actually do get a shot right on one of their drive chains.
Yeah.
So they've got kind of this interesting layout. I think they're all chain reductions for drives, and the first stage happens inside the robot, kind of right behind where the weapon is, and then the second stage of reduction happens outside the robot, and so the sprocket actually extends beyond the top and bottom plate just a little bit, and we are able to hit them right there in the drive chain on one side.
It's quite the shot. That's crazy. Obviously, Tom, I'm sure you were watching intently in the pits. I'm sure possibly a fight you might have had with either of these two later on. You could have ended up with, but What did you reckon?
Well, I think it was a very well matched fight. I mean, just looking at Copperhead, it is the most compact machine I've ever seen. It's so tiny, and Poison Arrow was absolutely tiny as well. And Copperhead, of course, is tiny. It's so tiny, and that would be a very hard robot to fight, I think, because it's just an absolute brick, isn't it? And I think Skorpios going in there, you did very, very well to take on that kind of a brick. I think he came out with a very legitimate victory there. I think it was a very tough opponent. It's a shame that they weren't driving quite at 100% at the start. But again, you had a really great shot on that drive chain. Excellent. But no, I think it was a really cracking fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Very good indeed.
Absolutely. Well, it was a good win for Orion and Skorpios. A W on the board, and well, who knows if it will continue. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see later on in the season. But our second fight of the night was between the newcomer-ish Bloodsport with I can't remember the guy's name who's on Bloodsport. Who was about last year. I can't remember for the life of me.
Griffin.
That's the guy. And his own team this year with Bloodsport taking on the very experienced Lucky. For my 2 cents, first of all, I really love the little skis that Lucky was running on at the back. I thought that was really clever to kind of reduce the weight, take the wheels off. You don't necessarily need them. I thought that was, put more armour on, which obviously in the end kind of. It's all, I want to say it wouldn't say it backfired because it held up for so long, but then just Bloodsport just really seemed to kick into a high gear. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it did seem to have a lot of traction issues. I think because those two wheels were missing.
Yes. And
Lucky kind of really needs those four wheels in order to drive properly. So because of that, we just sliding across the box everywhere, and it was a bit almost like it was Mechanism wheels or something like that.
Yeah, it was crazy. But I think and I don't know how much you gents would know about Bloodsport's issues, but it was it just seemed like they had to rein it in every now and then to kind of let it cool down. I think they said it might have been cooling that was an issue for the motors.
Yeah, I think the way they've got their weapon set up is a vaguely similar way to how Son of Y actually does it. So instead of having a single motor and a belt or a chain with a clutch driving the weapon, they've got several motors directly underneath the weapon, all with small spur gears on that kind of mount straight to the weapon. And I figured that's probably for redundancy, but I don't think there's much of a clutch on that. So on a hit, a lot of that force is going kind of straight into the motors, and perhaps over many hits, it kind of slowly, piled on the wear into the system. And that might have been what happened. But it's a very scary machine when it's going, isn't it? Hearing that in the test box was pretty scary.
Yeah. Orion, anything to add to this fight?
Oh yeah, I definitely enjoyed it quite a bit. I mean, a good bit of back and forth. It kind of almost looked like Lucky was going to have it. I will say watching from the outside and what other teams do, in reaction to how they previously do is kind of interesting. So this configuration of Lucky's with the skids on the back and the two wheels is probably just like in reaction to losing those back wheels or trying to armor them, but not having enough weight to really armor everything.
Yeah.
And I don't think it really paid off for them because you might be able to test that, like, say, out, on a piece of pavement, but driving in the box is so much different. And you can kind of see that it was misbehaving somehow. Some part of the front of the robot was dragging, and the floor was super uneven.
Yeah.
Season.
Yeah, and you can see a few times in this episode how I think Hydra dug itself into the floor, which we'll get onto in a minute. But it was good to see that Lucky put up a good fight. They've always seemed to, particularly last season they kind of started slow, but started to pick up towards the end. This season they've started. I wouldn't say they started slowly. I think they did quite well considering they generally struggle against the big horizontals. But it was good debut for Bloodsport. I suppose you could say this season's Ice Wave really in the sense that it's a big horizontal bar, and it's nice to see a new robot come along and shake up the established teams like your Luckies. I think that was a really good fight. I thought anyway. It was good. I say good back and forth. Went the full 3 minutes. So nice to see.
Yeah. Not many spinner fights go for 3 minutes. So it was good. It was good to see that go all the way. Really, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, something to consider on the live circuit that these bots have some sort of pedigree to them, because obviously Bloodsport inspired quite heavily by like Tornado Mur, and Lucky obviously was Ziggy back in the day when it won everything ever. So
yeah, it did. Yeah, absolutely did. We'll move on to. I mentioned Hydra. I suppose we better talk about the fight we had with.
Hail Hydra.
Well, this is it. I mean, this thing. We saw the great little segment again with Jenny in the pits with the how high can they throw a washing machine. I personally think it was a bit unfair that they let Bronco have a running start, but sure.
It was also a bit rigged because they had a little plank of wood.
Yeah.
It's got the washing machine for Bronco, so of course it's going to go higher.
Yeah. Bronco had the running start. It was kind of angled towards its flipper a bit better. I don't know. It was good. It was good watch nonetheless. But I thought free shipping had this because Hydra, struggling to dial it in, as we say, they kind of dug the floor up a little bit as well. I thought, like Richie straight out the gate, straight under the floor, which is, unfortunate, but it happens.
Yeah, I think this is the same floor they've used in every season so far, and they've done what they can. They've hammered it flat and re-welded parts, but it's still the same floor, and I think. It's had a few.
Has it seen better days?
Yeah.
So
the trend of robots getting caught on the floor is definitely, it's definitely an issue that a lot of the builders had to work around.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
What power this Hydra thing has? I mean,
Oh my God.
considering I'm sure a lot of people kind of think raise a few eyebrows. It's hydraulics and such. It's very different, but wow. I think a lot of people have sort of perked up and took notice of how good Hydra actually is. I mean, obviously it's coming from a team with great pedigree in Waiachi, but this was, surely beyond everyone's expectations.
Yeah,
it's a monster, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great bot.
Ned?
I mean, that first flip was just like how high did free shipping go?
Yeah, absolutely. We saw in the kind of pre-season thing with the Vegas event, how high can Bronco flip free shipping? Well, I think it probably went about the same height. So it is interesting that the alternative solution to a big flipper in the US, the hydraulics, works as well as the well refined Bronco. And I think it was really, really quite impressive that they managed to get the win in the end. I think free shipping as well, very unlucky. They showed in the live event that they can self-right. It just on this occasion, I'm assuming there was an issue with the lifter.
Yeah, it does look that way. Yeah. They can normally self-right pretty easily. So.
Yeah. Underneath that big orange box is just a series of fur reduction. So I mean, it could have easily been that when they landed it upside down so hard that like something blocked one of the earlier stages of reduction, and that arm just couldn't move.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate. They, as we said, they've shown that they have the torque in the arm to lift them back over, and it's kind of a sad way for the fight to end because free shipping. I think this is the first time it's been knocked out, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, considering the opponents that they fought. But it is a tough opponent that they fought, and Hydra can be fairly happy with it. Again, a really established team now, I suppose, in free shipping, and obviously Gary Jim driving as well. They can be very happy with the win.
Yeah, knocking out Gary Jim with essentially original sin, without a spinner of any kind, is no mean feat at all.
No, absolutely not. And it was I think they can be very happy with how Hydra tested on.
Oh yeah. I think such a fantastic debut as well.
Yeah.
I think this season it's definitely one of my favorite robots for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the most impressive thing is how compact that hydraulic system is in comparison to a pneumatic system.
You have to look at Hydra, and obviously you can't really tell from the scale of the washing machine, but they look about a bit smaller than Bronco. I don't know if that's the case
Absolutely.
or not. And you just kind of think, how are they fitting all that amazing technology into just a really tiny little space?
And it's like they said as well. I'm still going.
What was that? Sorry.
I think they could go even smaller. I think they could repackage it and go maybe even 20 or 30% smaller than they currently have it.
That's crazy.
They originally were going to run 2 motors and pumps, and they didn't end up having weight, so they switched down to 1. So that's like a whole weapon motor gear pump assembly that they could re-optimize to not have in their robot.
Wow.
Yeah, and
it's kind of ominous, really, isn't it?
Like they said in the interview as well, hydraulics. There's a lot you can do with it, whereas with the pneumatics, it's less stuff because it's just like air and stuff.
There's a lot of empty space with pneumatics, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I suppose we best move on to Tom.
Oh yes.
And your lover's Tiff.
Oh my god, yeah. So, but for the record, me and Tim are very good mates before, and we're very good mates after.
These things are obviously always played up for TV. Obviously, you've never disliked Tim. Let's be real here. You've been mates ever since you kind of met each other in Robot Wars, really. I suppose, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, going all the way back, we first met back in series 9 of Robot Wars with Toron and Concussion. That very first fight that we had together, I was knocked out in about 8 seconds because, funnily enough, my link fell out. So that was good fun.
Well. There's a whole other hot potato there.
Yeah, and Tim is absolutely one of my best mates ever since. Really, naturally, of course. And we've worked on smaller robots before, and we've helped each other out with things. And then, of course, we did Monsoon last year, which was really, really good. But I think we're both very used to having our own teams, and I came from Toron, Tim came from Concussion. And last season we worked very well, but there was definitely a few times where there was a bit of friction between us, a bit of
You're both dominant characters in your own team.
We are. We're very different people, and 2.5 weeks together in a small confined space is always going to cause a bit of trouble, but we're totally fine, which is good. So
it leads us to this.
Yeah. So coming back this season, we totally knew that this was going to happen. This was inevitable. So very early on in Monsoon's design, we decided that we needed to have something ready for Ragnarok. So we had 2 ideas. So one of the ideas that we didn't actually use, but we had there, was that we actually had the ability to lock the pivot halfway up. And the idea with that would have been that as the axe comes down, it kind of deflects off the top armor towards the back, so it's never hitting a very flat surface. And the other idea that we actually did implement was we'd replace our thick front armor with half the thickness. So it was going from 6mm to 3mm hardox on the front. And basically that let us put 4mm hardox plates on the top. So that's hardened steel plates top and bottom, actually. And
serious stuff,
when we were rolling into that fight, we swapped the armor out very carefully when Tim was outside, and I don't think he actually noticed up until the point that we were lining up to go really into the fight. And Tim at the same time was designing with something with Monsoon in mind as well.
Oh, what was it? I can't remember what it's called. Was it the Heartbreaker? Was it? That's the one.
Yeah.
Which looked great.
Yeah, I think you'd be better asking Tim about that. But I think originally he had something a bit like, well, I imagined he had something like a pickaxe, that kind of design in mind.
Yeah.
And I think maybe they had some weight issues or just ran out of time. But they came with a different looking Heartbreaker to what I expected. And I think it was a pretty good fight as well. Yeah.
I suppose from your perspective it would be because you with the win, I suppose. But I did appreciate the fact that you did try and write them, try and get the the entertainment factor out there, because this had been built up. You guys, you gone your own separate ways. You want to put on a big old grudge match, and it was a shame that Ragnarok was suffering its various issues, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Monsoon 2 and Ragnarok are two completely brand new robots, and Ragnarok especially because it's a brand new design, it's a brand new everything. Whereas Monsoon is proven from last year. This is completely new. So going into this fight, we knew that we wanted to put on a good show first and foremost. So we chatted beforehand and said, if one of us is stuck, can we knock each other over, keep it going for as long as possible? And if, don't hit me at the back, don't hit me here, that kind of thing. So going into the fight, the plan, of course, was to avoid contact for a few seconds, spin up and see what we can do. The first hit was about half speed, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the second one was most of the way there. And I hit them, and they got flipped upside down, and I wanted to keep it going, but I think I heard Tweedy mentioning how he saw some smoke or something. So
that was it.
I just backed off because I didn't want to hurt my friends, So,
it was good to see the sportsmanship after the fight as well. Obviously you guys all hugging it out. So
yeah, and again we're like best mates before, best mates after. We went out for drinks. It's fine. Totally fine. And straight after that fight, I was seeing, can I help out? Are you okay? What's going on? And
sure.
Which
is always the way. It's always the way.
Yeah, and so again, it's a shame that it was a short fight, but you get some long ones, you get some short fights. It's just the way it goes sometimes. These are completely custom-made machines that take months and months to build, and you don't entirely know what's going to happen until you have a fight. Anything can go wrong. Anything at all can happen. And in this case, Ragnarok, seemed to have some teething issues. So, yeah.
I'm sure we'll see them perform better later on in the year.
I'm sure we'll see them again.
See, Orion, I'm sure you were keeping an eye on this quietly in the pits. What was going through your mind in this fight?
I was really curious to see how hard Ragnarok was going to hit. Being a new bot, just like, super curious always with hammer robots. Like, are you going to be kind of like Vita and Chomp level of like crazy out of control swinging a hammer, or are you going to be more, blacksmith, just kind of bonking and holding? So I was very curious to see how that was going to go. I really wanted to see more from Ragnarok, just wailing away. But that's how it goes. It was really hard to tell. I'll say from the outside that a lot changed with Monsoon. I was kind of surprised to hear that from Tom just now. Actually, it looks very similar to the previous season's entry. So good little changes inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ned, anything more to add?
Not really. Just it's bit of a shame this didn't go on a bit longer. I think it could have been a decent fight, but it is what it is. It's just very quick.
Yeah.
Knockout.
One of those things, unfortunately. But I'm sure we'll see Tim and Tweedy come back much stronger later on in the season. But
Oh yeah.
we'll move on to our next fight, which is between the Mad Catter, which, by the way, I love the guy. He's just I can't remember his. It was Martin something or other. I can't remember his name. I'm gonna look it up.
Is it Mason?
That's it. Yeah, that's the guy. He was.
I love him so
something
much.
else. What an absolute dude. He's just brilliant. And anyway, Mad Catter. After my small fangirling there, Mad Catter fought Railgun MAX, the other Chinese entry.
It's got completely ultra mode.
It got Kit-Katted. That's the only way I could describe it. Like that, I was not expecting that. Like, obviously, we all kind of, a lot of people have said, keep an eye on Railgun MAX. It looks kind of, impressive the way it's designed.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't expecting it to be that powerful.
Yeah, Railgun S, obviously in the River game, same team, they dominated last year. So this is definitely one to keep your eye on, I'd say.
Yeah. Obviously, Tom and Orion, I'm sure you guys were having keeping an eye on the fight. I'll come to Tom as a spinner kind of user first. How highly do you rate Railgun Max's big drum?
I think I certainly rated it quite highly, especially seeing the pedigree that they've come from. It's a very scary machine, very very scary, and certainly one to watch. We haven't seen too many egg beater style robots really doing that well in the heavyweight division, kind of on the televised shows at least, right?
Yeah.
We've had things like Hobgoblin, yeah, and we're starting to see these egg beater style robots now on BattleBots as well, and especially one of the very few Chinese teams that's come across. It's fantastic to see them come and just dominate like that. It's very scary but very cool at the same time.
Yeah, I always find it amazing that they've come so far in the 5 or so years that Robo Combat's been a thing in China. Really, they've gone from Genesis to this in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's a bit scary, isn't it? I mean, we've had BattleBots and Robo Wars going for so long now, and you've got second generation Roboteers now, and China's been doing it for around 5 years, and they've caught up this quickly.
It's very 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 scary indeed. Obviously, Orion, not that you aren't a spinner user. You had was it Electric Boogaloo back in the day?
Yeah, Electric Boogaloo, and before that, the first heavyweight that I worked on was actually an egg beater called called Sirloin.
Sirloin. Interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot at stake there.
It had
yeah, sorry, I had to do it. Anderson's not here. I had to bring out one of the most terrible puns of all time. Obviously, you've worked with spinners for a long time yourself. How do you rate Railgun MAX?
I was impressed with their redundancy. I was a little worried about their kind of more exposed weapon motors. So immediately behind their egg beaters, they have kind of 4 fifth scale style brushless in runners, and then each one of them has its own kind of belt, 2 per side to the weapon. But there's no armor at all. It's just a weapon in front of them. So I was a little worried about that. Certainly not an issue in this fight. Totally spun up and worked and everything. But yeah, it was. It's an impressive little bot. It's pretty dense as well. It's quite a small bot, and their mini bot looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. I wasn't. As we said earlier, we kind of had a prediction that it might do it all right this season. Considering. As we said, the pedigree that that team have, but I think it's certainly turned a few more heads than now. That thing is certainly one to keep an eye on. As for Mad Catter, I mean, apart from the great the great team captain, he was fantastic. He was loving life. I'm kind of gutted that we didn't get to see more of it in this fight. It was never really got a chance to get going because of the dominance that Railgun MAX showed. I was really disappointed. I had them down as a bit of a dark horse to get some sneaky results, but not on this occasion.
Yeah, it's a rough way to go. But kudos to the Mad Cather team. I think it's a really cool design. In the same way that I think Red Devil has that redundancy. They've got those 3 pods, and all 3 of them are powered. And because they're all powered separately, if one of them gets knocked off, it can still run, as we saw, which makes for some very entertaining fights.
Absolutely.
And the fact that those 3 pods are mounted with rubber shock mounts, and you can see them when one of the pods is ripped off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really good because you can isolate each pod, and in terms of taking knocks, it's great for absorbing impacts. But I think the way they had them mounted wasn't ideal because they were all in shear, so any knocks hard enough could rip them all in half. But in terms of a concept, I think it's a really, really clever way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they put on a good show. Regardless of the result, really, they kind of, they had fun trying to wiggle the, both sides of the machine going. It was great, and that was good fun. And another one up for BattleBots bingo, by the way. Another a robot split in half this season. Well done.
It's also quite a good story, I guess, with just how they just turned up and now they're just in the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. Like, really, really good. I suppose we best move on.
I think it was BreakerBox.
Oh, it was BreakerBox. Yeah, BreakerBox and Falcon.
BreakerBox Falcon, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the other Y-axis machine, the third machine that the Wisconsin-based team came with. I believe it's based off one of their... Was it a middleweight they had years ago, I think? I can't remember for the life of me. I'm sure there was another robot that they had called Falcon, but this one's got 2 drums. Kind of surprising.
And it looks straight out of Arena 2. You've got like the 2 drums and typhoon teeth and like a bunch of like extenders like sticky out like wedgelets on there. It's straight out of RA2. I love it.
It really is. In fairness, it actually hit really hard. I wasn't expecting it to do as well as it did, and I'll be honest. Like, I watched the fight back a few times. Like, at the start, obviously BreakerBox dominated the fight, but obviously BreakerBox eventually stops and it's just flapping around its hat, I suppose. And I really think they should, like, I'm sure they would have been notified about, the whole, movement thing, and they did nothing. I honestly think they could have lost that fight. I think Falcon were pretty unlucky not to win, to be honest with you, with, the damage caused and obviously BreakerBots dying at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Falcon didn't quite perform as well as they'd hoped. I'm not entirely sure what's happening. They seem to struggle more when they had both drums going. I mean, perhaps it was an issue that they couldn't source enough current from the batteries because it's so small. Maybe they didn't have enough batteries.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure, but it was a good fight and fair play to BreakerBox. It was a very real win.
Yeah.
And Falcon is fantastic, of course, as well. It's such a tiny, compact machine. And,
I was gonna say actually, like Copperhead is like small. I knew that from the get go, but seeing Falcon, I mean, Copperhead just looks like a super heavyweight in comparison.
Yeah, it's not even that. The fact that they've managed to fit, is it eight wheels that are all driven in there? Because obviously they've got 4, I think they've got 4 little ones on the bottom, 4 little ones on the top, and then 2 drums.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it's the size of Copperhead, but they have 2 full-size drums and 8 wheels. It's mad.
How do they do that?
It's just that they're a very smart family. Clearly,
there's some good genes going on round in for Team Wachi and the Ewits. BreakerBox obviously had a good showing as well. They dominated the fight. I'm sure. Orion, I'm guessing you've probably fought BreakerBox over the years with some of your live event machines.
No, actually, I was in some of the same competitions, but never fought them.
Okay.
But
go on, talk us through it.
I will say, I was kind of missing their big titanium plow that they had at RoboGames and some other events.
Yeah, it's an optimized design. They've obviously worked on it for years and years and years, and it's nice to see Jim bring something different other than just Nightmare. But it's always great to see that Nightmare in the arena. But obviously BreakerBox is a much more modern machine. It's a much more optimized machine for, I say, as you said, today's competition. It's a lot smaller, a lot more compact. it's good to see that he's brought something new to the table, and hopefully we'll see Breaker Box do a lot better throughout the season. Obviously, kind of once again, it's kind of teething issues with the machine, but we'll have to wait and see how he gets on later on. Which brings us to the main event, which saw the champions Bite Force back in the arena for the first time, and they took on Yeti. I know we mentioned earlier we don't normally see spinner fights go to 3 minutes, but this one did. And the fact that Bite Force didn't stop working throughout, apart from I think the drive went on one side right at the end. Normally, if a weapon goes, then yeah, okay, fair enough. 3 minutes, you can kind of understand why a spinner fight would go that long. But both weapons, I think, were still working at the end, which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bite Force is a very scary machine. It's so well optimized for just destroying things.
Yeah. This is quite possibly my favorite main event, but obviously,
yeah, I think it's the best one so far.
Yeah, so far, because these two bots have just so much caliber and pedigree. When you put them in the arena together, stuff's gonna go flying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Yeti did a very serviceable job considering the caliber opponent they're against. But you look at this fight and it's just Bite Force has no how do you beat it? How do you beat it? I mean, Orion obviously. How you've got probably a bit more of an advantage than most, as you have an overhead weapon, and you can kind of reach that, weapon chain, which has obviously been their downfall once and once only. How do you combat it?
Well, it's a solid bot and it's well driven. You just kind of have to hope for, a moment to get in there and hit something that's vital. It doesn't even really gyro that much, even spun up all the way. So it's hard to even kind of get that kind of advantage like you might against, one of the higher spinning drum spinners. So it would all be about just trying to out wedge in just one of the exchanges and get a good shot in there. That's really all you can kind of hope for with Bite Force. I actually work with Paul now, so
all right.
to work at the same company.
Maybe you should learn some trade secrets, maybe.
Oh yeah, I've gotten to see some the behind the scenes, chassis being prepared and stuff. But yeah, it's a solid bot. One thing I'll say is your chain area, that weapon area, is definitely vulnerable. And he does such a good job keeping the front of his bot pointed towards his opponents that no one ever gets around to the back. But there's definitely some juicy bits back there if someone got back there.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we've seen it only, as I say, only the one time before that it's been hit very hard. Obviously, Tom as well. You've obviously got a big vert as well, very similar to Bite Force. What makes it so special? Obviously we mentioned it doesn't gyro as much as others and whatever else, but why is it so much more effective, would you say?
I think it's just such a well designed robot. It's it's probably one of the best vertical spinners, if not the best vertical spinner there. And when you have two spinners going at each other, I think Orion touched on that as well. It's more a game of who can get under who. And you see Bite Force going around with 4 wedgelets that scrape the floor, and that's incredibly hard to get under. And when Yeti was in that fight, they had 2 very long forks as well that were also ground scraping. So in that initial exchange, it was more a case of, again, who could get under who. And straight away, I think Bite Force got the upper hand. And as the fight went on, they slowly bent those forks further and further up.
It's funny you mention the forks.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'll come to Nate quickly. No, did you see the forks get underneath it, getting jammed in there as well, kind of sticking it out? I wasn't expecting them to get caught in the chassis itself. That was kind of crazy.
Yeah, that was certainly very odd. I've heard that apparently they actually did get properly stuck a couple of times, and that's apparently Trey just literally kicked them out at one point because they had to be separated.
Yeah, kind of like the quantum blacksmith fight at the start of the season. Yeah.
Yeah, except these two could actually get separated.
Oh, controversial there. Oh.
But yeah, I think with Bite Force, yeah, as I said before already, I think the wedgelets are the most pretty effective part of that robot. That's probably the reason why it's so effective, but also because it can be swapped out for a bigger sort of steel wedge when fighting like horizontals or something, and it's just so like versatile that it can be changed so simply to fit almost any opponent, and that's just why it's so effective to me. I think
it is crazy. Obviously, as I think Greg summed it up very nicely at the end of it. He goes, "We fought the best robot here, and we lasted 3 minutes. I'm good."
Yeah. I think Bite Force is probably the best robot there in my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so effective, and as we've seen over the course of 3 years now, and and I think Yeti, as much as they did take the defeat on this occasion, I think no one can hold it really against them. Not many teams last season went 3 minutes with Bite Force, and a Bite Force that was running its weapon the whole fight as well. Like I think it was only Blacksmith that took it to the judges anyway. Yeah. So it's crazy that they managed to do it with the weapon working the whole fight.
Mm.
Yeah, which brings us quite neatly to the end of the episode. Well, it would be, however, we have the science show fight from last week, which was the Beyblade fight, wasn't it, between between Gigabyte and Chronos. Gigabyte gave us some big hits in this one. It really had quite some power behind it. It looked like the Gigabyte of old almost.
Mm. Yeah, it's a very scary machine, that, isn't it? when it's going at full speed, it's terrifying. I wouldn't want to go anywhere near that.
Absolutely, it's a mean thing.
It's a mean thing, and Chronos as well is a really cool design. The way they've got their weapon motor mounted, and you can see the gears connecting in the top. I think that's fantastic. It's great aesthetics, but it's also very functional.
Yeah,
and I love that. I think it's great.
Yeah, why have style and substance when you can have both?
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
Orion, you were going to say sorry.
Oh yeah, I can actually talk a little bit about Chronos. The primary builder on that team is one of my good friends. He lives down in LA, and we hang out outside of robot fighting a bit. And that whole robot was kind of inspired by a scrapyard find. They found a 1-inch thick plate, 4 foot by 8 foot of magnesium alloy in the scrapyard, and they were able to get it for like $100, $200 or something like that. And so the whole robot is essentially water jet out of magnesium alloy.
Oh wow, that's crazy. So the whole thing is, so they literally just found this giant block of metal in the scrapyard and they just machined that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that. Like.
Yeah.
I know, the days of, I suppose, scrapyard builds is kind of over, but like that's the closest I suppose you're gonna get in this BattleBots competition. Certainly, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So then on the outside they have AR400 kind of bolted on over the top magnesium, and then I believe the teeth, the kind of scoop-looking teeth that they have are titanium, if I recall right. Oh no, maybe they switched to steel for this last round. They might have switched to steel. I think they originally were titanium, but BattleBots has a little more weight, so they're able to switch it out.
Yeah, I mean, I did see I think there was a picture going around somewhere of it digging up the test floor, and I did notice in this fight they were kind of wobbling all over the place when they were spinning up. I don't know if that was anything to do with them digging up the test floor at all, or would you guys know?
It runs it runs still on a contactor, so there's no speed controller in Chronos in the current version. So when they hit the button to turn on the weapon, like the whole inner robot spins.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, so it's basically either on or off, basically.
Yeah, it's basically just on or off.
That's crazy. It's a bit of interesting trivia to know, like about a really nice looking machine, certainly with Chronos, and obviously it's quite cool to see Gigabyte get a win. You know, they started fairly slowly last time, but they're such an experienced team, and they've obviously got all their focus on BattleBots this year, not split across, you know, the two competitions that they did last year. So, be interested to see how they get on.
Yeah, also no Chinese parts either. So.
Oh no, let's not remind them. The poor guys, they probably went through enough last season.
Hope they've got a new weapon shaft this time round. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dearie me. Well, anyway.
Hopefully it's not made of paper mache this time. We'll see.
Oh, too soon, man. Too soon. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the episode, and I have to say a big thank you to all three of you for kind of, some of you shorter notice than others.
Oh no, anytime. The problem with me is that I just don't shut up sometimes. It's fine.
Yeah, obviously Ned, thank you very much as well. It's been absolutely. It's nice to finally have you on. We've tried to get you on for a while, and
yeah. It's been good to finally get on here, honestly.
Brilliant, excellent. And Orion as well. Best of luck for the rest of the season with Skorpios. It's so far so good, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Brilliant. Well, anyway, I've been Sam at 64.
Oh. Wait, do I go?
You can go if you want to.
Okay, I've been Tom from Monsoon from the BattleBots TV show. Whee!
I've been Orion Beach from the BattleBots TV show.
And I've been Ned from Shuntposting, I guess.
I've come from Shuntposting.
He's about there somewhere. Be sure to go and check everyone out in the description, and we'll see you next week for episode 4 of the BattleBots season. I'm sure that'll be a world of fun as well. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye now.